Welcome to the Boundless Mindset podcast. I'm your host, Mona Abow, helping ambitious women of color to become an empowering force and launch a lucrative online business they love. Hello, Boundless beings. Thank you so much for being here today. I appreciate you joining me. On this episode, I had the pleasure of interviewing Qatar Al-Alawi. Qatar is an international leadership coach, and prior to this role, she was a lawyer. She has more than 10 years of experience with multiple modalities and connecting hundreds of leaders across the world with their core values, purpose, and larger positive impact in the world. Qatar bridges Eastern wisdom with Western methodologies and has a deep understanding of human patterns and soul journeys. Qatar's programs enable leaders to create a life where who they are, what they believe in, their work, and their leadership are all in perfect balance and flow and in harmony within themselves, their environment, and in service for a better world. Qatar and I collaborated in multiple occasions, and every time I work with her, I get this feeling of enjoying her presence. What I really appreciate about Qatar is her authenticity, her care and compassion for women of color, and how she's not afraid to voice issues that matter to women of color. I really enjoy spending time with Qatar. Every time we do something together, I get the warmth of her energy, and I just want to spend more time with her. She's very authentic. She's very sincere. I love her passion of creating a safe environment for women of color to express, heal, and just create that sisterhood. So I'm always looking forward to more collaborations with Qatar. So without further ado, let's get this interview started. Welcome, Qatar, to the Boundless Mindset podcast. Thank you so much for being here. How are you?
Thank you, Mona. It's so lovely to be here. I'm doing great today, actually. Thank you for asking.
Summer is finally here. It's exciting.
It is, and it's a beautiful sunny day today, so it feels good.
Yeah. Thank you, Qatar. You and I met through the She Did It network group, and we collaborated on different occasions, and I can't help but feel drawn to you, your energy, and what you do. So, so I know you in that sense, but I would love to learn a little bit more for our audience. Maybe tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you, Mona. And I want to say I also love collaborating with you. It's always an absolute joy. And a little bit about myself. I think I would start to say that I'm multidimensional. So it's really hard to sort of put a definition for me, at least, to what I do or who I am. But essentially, I would say I'm a woman of color who has been on her own journey of transformation and her own journey of recognizing that we live in very imperfect systems, and finding my own way into what actually works, coming through that sort of disillusionment with what is, and then landing in acceptance of it, which is quite the journey, as we know, internally. And then just becoming that, coming to that place of becoming the change I want to see in the world. And recognizing that when we don't find externally what we need, it's probably because we're here to create it.
Wow, that's profound. That's profound. Yeah. Yeah, I love that. We often complain about the problems that we come across in life. But like you said, those are lessons and have something to do with the path that we should take, the difference that we want to make. So maybe talk to us a little bit about your work and what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So I work primarily with change makers. My personal profile is that I was trained as a lawyer here in Canada. I'm also an intercultural mediator and a conscious leadership coach and facilitator. And so what I do is I really bring the background of everything I've learned and everything I've experienced having lived across very different cultures into programs and workshops that support leaders in leading from a very authentic and holistic place, where they're able to recognize what it means to work with people of various backgrounds and how to work with them from a place of deep respect of what they actually bring and recognition of the skills that they bring or the gifts that they bring that don't necessarily fall within the spectrum of what we're used to in our own culture. And having worked globally, I can do this with people from different cultures. So it's not only in Canada. I've done a lot of work in South Korea. I've done work in India. I work a lot with Europe as well. And so it's really a global lens to diversity and inclusion that is sort of the uniqueness of my work, along with personal conscious leadership, which is about radical self-responsibility of who we are as a leader, how we show up in every interaction within our own personal life space or within our workspaces, and recognizing the dance between those two, that nothing is random, nothing is external, all goes to the same patterns that we hold as the core of who we are, that we interact with the world from.
Qatar, that's so incredible, and it's so needed. And I wanna hear more about your typical clients, right? The people that you work with. And but before we get there, maybe tell us how you found this path. Did you know that this is what you were gonna do? I know you mentioned you were a lawyer, so I'm just wondering how that happened for you.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I had absolutely no idea this is where I was going. In fact, the younger version of myself just wanted to fit in. My deepest desire was to find my place within this Canadian society that I absolutely loved and wanted to belong to. And in some ways I did, and it was a beautiful space. And in other places, I experienced the dissonance of having a different cultural background and being met by people and systems who saw it as a weakness, and who were even in denial of the fact that they were seeing it as a weakness. People who really interacted with me from the space of, we're all the same. But when we don't recognize what we carry below the surface, we can't really create equity. And so I would say that the brush between the friction between equality and equity is really what launched me into a deep personal journey of why is it that it didn't work out for me when externally I did everything else that others do. And that's when I started my own exploration as what it meant for me to be a lawyer, why I had signed up to be a lawyer in the first place, that deep desire that I had for equality. And becoming a coach helped me recognize I really, in some ways, was very lucky in falling into a program that acknowledged systemic oppression and having the lens of where the I as a person meets systems started to open up a whole different world for me, because I was no longer just wrong in my own perspective. I could start to recognize that I can do all the right things and still end up with what looks like a failure from the outside. And that it's not all just mine. It's mine to own. It's mine to transform. It's mine to rise into my power within, and then sort of create a system that calls in the other rather than just calls them out.
As you were saying that, I thought of so many women who, did the right thing, worked really hard, went to school, graduated, you know, looked for the jobs, they got the jobs, and then ended up in a place where, they were not happy. They didn't feel visible. They didn't feel valued. And, just recognizing sometimes that it's not you. You haven't done anything wrong. You are in a system that's not equipped to support you. That you're in a system that is not recognizing your needs. It's very unfortunate that a lot of women of color are in this situation. Day in, day out, trying to just survive the day, doing what you need to do and surviving the day. I saw a lot of that in my work. I see a lot of that in my circle of friends, family members. And at some point, it becomes just something that you have to deal with. You know what I mean? So how did you get past that? How did you get past the frustration, feeling defeated, just being in that survival mode? How did you say, you know what? There has to be a better way, and I want to be part of that?
I don't know that I can say the how of it because it's a long journey, to be honest. But I do remember this one moment where I was in coach training as a coach at the time. And there was this one moment where I saw a circle of more than 30 people. And we were from a variety of backgrounds, a variety of cultures, and a variety also of professional backgrounds. We were all coming from different professions, from different spaces. And there was this moment of total harmony where we were fully seeing and hearing each other across all those differences. And a spark sort of happened in me in that moment that I realized that it's never been the differences that are the problem. That there is a way, even with our differences, that we can meet in what's common about us as people. And my journey has been to articulate how do we get there and design sort of the programs from everything that I've learned that allow us to get there. And I've had a beautiful sort of journey with that. I remember about 2 years ago or so, I was in Mumbai, India, working with a group of global leaders. And we had done a few modules. And at one point, one of them just looked at me so puzzled and said to me, "So Qatar, what we're saying is really at the core of it all, we're all just struggling for power, to feel that we have power." And having the leaders be from so many cultures again really just sort of brought to light that we are all in fight. Even those who look like the oppressors are in fight. There is so much ingrained belief about not being worthy, not being enough, that competition is the only way through. And those beliefs are what's keeping us stuck in this space of dissonance and helplessness, even when we look like we're the powerful one.
Absolutely. We're all trying to protect that ego, right? It's saying, I'm the one in charge, so see me as the one in charge. And you want to reinforce that image, right? That you want to portray. But yeah, it's never really the difference. I mean, we like to think it's a difference, but it's really being respecting the difference, right? And appreciating the difference and valuing the human, right? The human being. And really the difference, if we recognize it as an advantage, can be really, useful in every aspect, can bring diversity in terms of, the way we see things, diversity of ideas, diversity of cultures, because we are in global economy. The world is a village now. So every organization has customers from around the world. So the more that you can foster that diversity within, the more you'll be able to support, your customers, right? So even looking at it from that survival, long-term viability standpoint as a business, as a company, even if you don't want to do it to be a good guy, do it for your survival because your bottom line depends on that.
Absolutely. And that's really interesting because I have a book that's coming out later this year. And that's one thing that I talk about, all the research that's been done that shows that the more you invest in diversity, the more your bottom line increases. And of course, I would hope that people would do it for the human element.
Yeah.
But the reality is a lot of people are motivated by more money.
Yes.
And so if that's your motivation, fine. It's sort of inevitable that transformation will touch who you are anyways.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever your surface level motivation is, what you're meant to learn through it and how you're meant to grow through it will happen, whether as an individual or an organization. I think the one big belief that we come across unconsciously is that I lose when the other wins. There's this sense that I have to give the other to create inclusion. Mm-hmm. But first of all, the other doesn't need anything from you. The other is just sort of being themselves. And when we are empowered in who we are, we command this respect that we don't need to ask for. And then when we create more equitable systems, we all win. Mm-hmm. And the win might be in the intangibles. If the person that looks again like they're winning on the surface level is sitting with a huge amount of self-loathing, of fear, of imposter syndrome, they might be winning financially, but in the intangible layer of life, they're not winning anything at all. Yeah. And I see that transformations with the leaders I work with one-on-one, where when they take that space to process all of that, the openness to the other becomes inevitable because they have nothing more to defend against.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That shift happens that it doesn't have to be a competition. It doesn't have to be, I gain because you lose. We gain more when we both win. So it's that shift of thinking and mindset that needs to happen. And you're right. Although it's ideal for it to come from a place of, I want to make the world a better place. I want to contribute to this change. But if it comes from a place of, in order for you to, be successful, you have to adopt these, this way of thinking. And the more that shift happens, then it becomes normal, right? So hopefully, that will happen. That shift will take place sooner rather than later. But for now, in this podcast, in the way when I work with my clients, I encourage them to, even if they're working for a company, to work for themselves, right? To create their own path to the success that they want, because far too long, we have been waiting for our employers to recognize us, to see how dedicated we are. But we often feel like we're not worthy of promotions. So what I always encourage my clients, speaking to my audience, is letting them know that you have to be conscious of what you want. And you have to take steps towards that, even if that means working your 9 to 5, but still doing your own thing in one way or another. So talk to me a little bit about that. I know your goal is to, support leaders to make that shift and provide space of diversity for their teams. But how do you support women that feel like, they don't really want to continue doing this struggle of waiting for this shift to happen? What would you say to those women, and how do you support them?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's so incredibly true, Mona, what you named. That I call that self-leadership. We have different names for it, but essentially it's coming to the space where we are leading our lives. We're no longer just receiving what's happening to us, but we take ownership and we become the captain of our own ship. Mm-hmm. And one way I do work with women who are looking for that, of course, One way that I do it is a program that I have called Do What You Love and Love What You Do, that takes them through a very thorough exploration of who they are, what are their core fundamental values in life, what is it that they have as skills and gifts, because I differentiate skills and gifts that they have to capitalize on and build on. And then it takes them to how can they build this beautiful career where essentially they're living life on their own terms. And that's what you and I are doing. Like we were just saying before we started the podcast, having our own business allows us to choose who we engage with, how we engage with, the amount of time or space that we'd like. If we need a break in the middle of our days, we can give ourselves a break in the middle of our days. If I want to be productive at 9 p.m., that's my business and nobody else's. I just have to deliver. That's all. Right? So there's this really, and it also gives the space to explore. Like for me, for years, when I was figuring out, because my journey came in levels and layers. And I always talk about working from where you are, but keeping your eye on who you're becoming. And so it gives the space, working for ourselves gives us the space to do what we need to do right now, but always have the opportunities and create the time and the reflection space that's necessary in the transformation space to get to our next level, again, faster and on our own terms.
Yeah, it's that self-leadership, self-awareness, and it's easy to get into that mindset where you are thinking of life happening to you rather than for you, right? Like in the beginning of this interview, you talked about even the hardships that happen, in your life are meant to accelerate you in one way or another. So to all the women who are now struggling in their workplaces because of their background, it's an opportunity for them to excel and get past that, to find ways to get past that and not feel defeated. So Qatar, talk to me about your entrepreneurship journey. I love what you're doing, the difference that you're making. When did that, and I know, it's a journey, right? You realize different parts of it at different stages. But you were a lawyer, you worked for the government. When did that light bulb, turn on for you and you decided to start your own business and become an entrepreneur?
I think that biggest light bulb came in maybe two moments that sort of added onto each other. The first one was when I realized I will never be seen here for who I am. I had tried everything I knew how to try. I had enough mentors that gave me the trust that my skills were no less than anyone else's. And so I realized it's not a skills gap. It's an environment that doesn't get me type of gap. And then realizing that it's not going to help me to keep fighting it. And the second piece came when I was again training as a coach and I saw these people for the first time. I was so blessed because I had a bunch of faculty from all around the world at the time. So there were some in the US, some in India, and now I'm one of them, by the way, which is pretty amazing. But there were these people that for the first time I met people who were not compromising who they are in life. They were living and working in alignment with their values, what mattered most to them, and really creating change in the world. And there was just this sort of I just found courage. I was like, wait a minute, if they can do it, why can't I?
This exists in the world. You don't have to compromise.
Exactly. And so, I graduated from the program. And of course, I was left with a million questions being a new coach. And, I just called them up and I said, hey, I just want to hear about your journey. How did you get where you are? And just sort of started from there. And for me, I also believe in, the idea of purpose, that we're not just here randomly, that there might be something more at play in our lives. And so I also became trained as a true purpose coach. And that allowed me to really start to align with what bigger contribution can I make to the world. And then again, supporting leaders to figure that out for themselves. Like that, what we often feel that what I really would like to do in the world is not possible. It's, because the world can feel so opaque at times.
Yeah.
And when we start to listen to those whispers that are very gentle and below the surface and start to believe them and feed the dreams instead of the fears, there's a whole different possibility that opens up. And for me, that's what I love. It's being the catalyst for all of that, and especially for leaders who are working to create systemic change. One of my clients was from a culture that's very different from Canada. And in her culture, there was a lot of shame around being a single parent, to the extent that women or even men who were single parents would not even disclose that to their employers out of fear of repercussions. And we started working together, and through the conversations and the journey, she sort of released a lot of the shame and reclaimed that lost power that was hidden there below the shame. And about a year later, she was able to impact policy for single parents and make sure that there were benefits available to single parents in her country. And so that whole journey of going from not even believing that our dream is possible, and suppressing it, sometimes we don't even hear it, to becoming that change and standing in the world and saying, but wait a minute, what you're doing doesn't work. There may be a policy, but it doesn't work. It doesn't account for everyone. And I stand for a world where everyone belongs.
Yeah.
And that's the type of work that I do also in the field of world peace and creating a world without war through the business plan for peace. And so it's really just, believing ourselves, recognizing that change is not only possible, it's inevitable at the time that we are right now. And it is calling each and every one of us to rise and say, I want a different future for my kids. And I now recognize that I have to be willing to do what it takes to be that change.
Yeah, we often forget how powerful we are, right? Like you were saying, the world seems so big and we can feel insignificant, in the world. But it's really that purpose-driven action that makes a difference. You know what I mean? It's you recognizing and owning your voice and recognizing that you have a purpose in this world. You're not just here to do admin work. You're not just here to wait for the clock to hit at 5 p.m. so you can go home, do your whatever motherly wife duties, sleep, do it all over again. And sometimes when you talk about that, what's your purpose? What would you like to do? To a lot of people, it seems like a luxury they can't afford. I can't even think about that. I have bills to pay. I'm tired. People are exhausted to even explore that. But if we don't take a moment and, just ask the right questions, it doesn't have to be, okay, I'm leaving my job next day, but it means being a human being that's engaged, that's conscious, that whatever they're doing, they're contributing to that purpose that they see for themselves.
Absolutely, Mona. I think you've said it so beautifully. And the beliefs that you said, that I don't have the time, or they're exhausted, or I can't afford this. Those are precisely the beliefs that keep them in the loop of not doing it. And it takes a decision. Oftentimes it takes a tragedy, unfortunately. And it's not a tragedy. It's a conscious decision to say, I'm going to feel the fear and sit here and say, what might be possible beyond?
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
it does mean, like you said, that you have to have it figured out. That's precisely, again, like the work that you do, the work that I do, like with the programs that we have. It's not about getting you to change anything overnight. Change takes time. Your inner transformation takes time. The outer manifestation of it takes time. The right questions to ask is, how do I start this journey? How do I make sure that I'm doing it in the most aligned way that meets all of my basic needs? That I'm not giving up my income needs just because of this grand word called purpose. Purpose has to also be very tangible and very grounded. Otherwise, all it is a dream.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, in the essence of it, we have to see ourselves worthy of more, worthy of happiness, worthy of living a purpose-filled life, worthy of having the things that we want in life, right? We have often compromised for things to be the same. We've compromised so we can survive. So, the shift needs to happen where we say, I'm done with survival. I want to live life. I want to live life to the fullest. I want to feel myself worthy of that success. So, what would you say to women who are, who deep down know they're worthy of more, right? But they're stuck in that survival life where, they have to stick to a job that's draining, that's soul sucking, but they feel like, okay, who's going to pay the bills? And I don't want to minimize paying the bills. Yes, we have to be responsible adults in the sense that we have to support our families, and that's important, not to take away from that. But life is more than that. And if you are measuring your life based on just doing that, then that's really where you're going to stay at. That's going to be your cap. But what if you could do more? What if you could not only pay the bills, but also live a life that you are happy with? That's not based on struggle and survival. What would you say to women who know they're worthy of more, but are stuck in places that are really just for survival? What advice would you give them?
Well, the first advice I would say is have compassion for yourself for where you are. Because that journey of wanting more and being stuck is not an easy one to break out of. It's precisely the moment where the fears have the most grip over you. Because once you've made the jump to start exploring, you actually usually have a tribe that you explore with. You're no longer alone, and everything becomes easier from there. And so, where they are right now is the most difficult part and is when they require the most self compassion. The other thing I would say is don't compare yourself to anyone and do not ascribe to what I call toxic positivity or what I've heard of recently, recognized or names as toxic positivity. You do not
Yes.
create a different life by dreaming it, by hoping for it, and just waiting for it to magically show up. You create a different life by facing the darkness, facing those inner demons that we all hold. And even you and I, Mona, as we're speaking to these women right now, at least for myself, I can't say I've arrived and I know how to take you from A to B 100%, and I never feel the fear. That's absolutely not true. We are both a masterpiece and a work in progress, all of us at all points in time. So give yourself self-compassion, find spaces that nourish your dreams, that nourish your soul, that acknowledge what you're working through and give you the tools for that. Because at the end of the day, you are the hero you've been waiting for. Nobody else is going to do it for you. So who's going to pay the bills? You are going to pay the bills. And who's going to move you to a better life? You are the one that's going to do it. And there's a way to do both. It doesn't have to be an either or.
Yes. I love that. I love everything you said. You are the hero of your own life. We're waiting to be rescued. We're waiting to, okay, if I only had this, that would be easier. You know what I mean? If I only had more support, if I only had money to start my own business, if I only had a husband who could provide for me. All these ifs and ifs and ifs. But the reality is, even if those things were present, they won't do the job for you. You have to be really and truly the hero in your life. There's no one coming to save you.
said, there's no husband or whatever male figure, because as women, we have been conditioned to wait for the male figure with a white horse.
Yeah.
And the reason I said hero is to really own that we are that figure for ourselves.
Absolutely. Yeah. It makes me think of my own life, and going through, my divorce and thinking for the longest time, like I put my life on hold for the harmony of the family, right? And waited to have my dreams come true based on his achievements. You know what I mean? You will do this for us. We're going to get there. But then I realized even if that happens, it's not really mine. I have to achieve my own. I have to achieve my own things, and that's powerful because we all have this gifts that we're born with, and that is supposed to, be somewhat something that we can contribute to the world and make a difference in our own way. Yeah, so I love that you mentioned that, and also that self-compassion. That is something that we have to be conscious of all the time. And you hear burnout, you hear people that look happy, successful, but you know, but they're not really how they seem, and that comes down to really going through this self-criticism, not being kind to ourselves, and comparing ourselves to everyone else, right? And just being in that competition mode. And we all fall into that. You could be on social media and you see people doing amazing things, and you can't help but wonder, oh, should I be doing that? I should be doing that. What am I doing? But that's only part of the picture, right? So it's so important to give yourself credit for all that you've done and be kind to yourself.
Absolutely. And one thing we have to demystify is that idea that what works for another person should work for me. We are so educated, schooled, and drilled into that there's one way of doing things, that there's one right way. Mm-hmm. And what I've found is that actually that's the complete opposite of the truth. Because when we look at our gifts, we each have a unique way that we create things, that we get to outcomes. Again, I personally talk about what I call individual fast track pathways. That forget what you've been taught you should do. It's about who you are and what works for you, what gets you from A to B. Mm. And I've recently been working with a leader who's actually a male, and he's primarily an intuitive person. And in the work that he does, there's quite a bit of numbers, and he has to make some of the decisions based on numbers. And yet he follows his intuition. And the more he follows his guts, the more the sales increase.
Yeah.
But to get to a place where you're able to follow your gut like that and to be irrational to a level that you're not even looking at numbers when your main, your business model functions around sales, that's a whole journey.
Yeah.
But absolutely. When you find what works for you as a person, that's the secret. It's never what works for someone else.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And like you said, you'll be more successful when you recognize that, because you're not forcing yourself to work with someone else's template of success. So yeah, give yourself permission to be different.
Yes.
And to
really
do you
different from everybody else, not just different, but that level of radical difference.
Yeah. I always encourage my clients to do that too, and to just infuse themselves in their brand as well, because we talk about building their own brand, and part of that is being as unique and different as possible, because we're all different and we all bring that uniqueness to the table. So the more we mask that with the status quo, the more we're watering down ourselves and diluting.
No, I was just going to say, and we also all have patterns that we reproduce, patterns of what doesn't work. And for myself right now, I'm in a big lesson there. I was teaching a bunch of, a group of our coaches recently about how to get started with your coaching practice. And my consistent advice is do what works for you. There are so many strategies, there are so many things out there, and it really doesn't matter what works for anyone else.
Yeah.
Just come back to you, because if you're in a place that's centered, then things will work out. If you're in a place that's chaotic and there's no coherence, then that's when things start to fall apart. And for myself, I'm really experiencing this right now and just remembering myself, oh, yeah, I thought I had integrated that lesson, but I'm integrating it right now. And that's the journey that we truly are in this together. We might be at different levels in different spaces, but we're always learning and peeling away layers and just giving yourself permission to live wholeheartedly. That's Brene Brown's living wholeheartedly. It's that radical level of honesty, knowing yourself and learning to trust yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. It's absolutely. It's being in that co-creation mode, right? We're always conditioned to follow someone else's script of success. We're conditioned to look for the answers from outside. And so we're always feeling unrest and looking, and trying to find the answers and trying to copy other people, trying to compete with people with completely different, gifts than we have, and we're not in tune with the answers that are within. I think this is something that always needs reminder for ourselves and the people that we support. Qatar, I know we're getting closer to the end. Any last words of advice? Maybe tell us a little bit more about how people can get in touch with you. Just some parting words.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Mona. I think as parting words, what I would say is what I tell all my clients. As long as your courage is bigger than your fear, you are going to make it. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to have it figured out today. You don't have to have it figured out for the whole journey. It's always just you're asking what is the right next step. And then from there, what is the right next step in every here and now? Life is a succession of here's and nows. And how people can get in touch with me. I know you'll have my website link, conscioustogetherness.com. They can follow me on LinkedIn, my personal website, qatarllalawi.ca. And just on social media. So I'm on LinkedIn, on Facebook, and on Instagram. And just send me an email or connect with me on LinkedIn. Probably that's the best way. Send me a message on LinkedIn.
Amazing. Yes, I'll link all that information. Thank you so much, Qatar. I really love spending time with you. I love what you represent. I love just the calmness and the energy that you bring. I'm a big fan.
Thank you so much, Mona. It's the same thing. I absolutely love who you are and what you stand for in the world. It's what you do for women of color is just absolutely beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah, more to come, more collaborations to come.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for joining the Boundless Mindset podcast. Please subscribe, rate, and review this podcast on the iTunes Purple app. If you're on social media, you can find me at the Boundless Mindset on Instagram and Facebook. Please tag me and let's continue this conversation. Until next time, stay boundless.